So as we're building our churches, we don't want to just build a church with many people in it or lots of people getting saved, but we desire to build a community, a family that exemplifies the relationship of Jesus Christ. We're committed to building life-enriching community, an authentic community that enthusiastically enfolds people from all cultures, all backgrounds with an unconditional love, and reaching people with relevant ministries that meet their needs holistically. So when we say this, what it looks like is life-enriching multicultural communities that reach people from all over the world, all ethnic groups, all backgrounds, all issues, all walks of life, all social, economic areas, all demographics, all age groups, all sexes, all tribes, all nations. Acts chapter 2, verse 42 to 47 gives us a picture of what that looked like. Because when the first church came together with 5,000 believers, they were a multicultural community from all over the world, the Bible said. And verse 42 says they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayers. And awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and their belongings and distributing their proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together, breaking bread in their homes, and they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved. It's interesting, many times when I speak to church leaders and church members, we are so focused on that last part, adding to their number every day, desiring to build a church where people are getting saved all the time, but not necessarily building the type of community where people stay in our churches. Sometimes we have very big doors with many people. We might have big crusades and big evangelistic campaigns and big advertising campaigns desiring many people to come into our church, and we dream of the day when hundreds or even thousands of people are entering the front door of our church, and we don't realize that we have a bigger back door than our front door. Many people are coming into our church and getting saved, but they're not staying with us because their needs are not being met, because they're not building relationships that are deep and meaningful. They're not building the type of relationships that look like we're in love with one another, that look like we're in family with one another, that look like we care for each other's practical and pragmatic needs. We believe the church is meant to be a life-enriching community. We want to be committed to one another in building an authentic and biblical community that unconditionally loves and effectively enfolds people from all cultures, all nations, all backgrounds. All people can be made to feel welcome and at home and part of this family we call Hope International Ministries. No matter where you go in the world, we want people to be able to walk into one of our churches and say, I'm at home here. I belong here. This is my family. That comes as we build authentic community with unconditional love. Galatians 6 verse 10 describes this when it says, so then as we have opportunity, let us do good to everyone, but especially to those of the household of faith. Many times as I travel around the world, I meet churches that are so focused on reaching the lost, and that's important. So focused on feeding the poor, and that's important. So focused on bringing families back together, and that's important, that they forget that we are to give special favor to those that are actually already in the family of God. The idea is that sometimes we feed the neighbor's children before we feed our own children. And the Bible would desire that as spiritual fathers and spiritual leaders, that we give special attention to those that are the children of God in our own churches. It says, and especially to those that are part of the household of faith. So we seek to create an encouraging community that supports one another. We desire to equip our churches so it's not the pastor doing all the pastoral care and the encouragement and the visiting, but we want to build a relationship in our churches where people look after one another, build up one another, teach one another, meet each other's needs in practical means and in spiritual ways, emotionally caring for one another, practically caring for one another, and even financially looking out for one another. We seek to build a caring community where we help one another. We're concerned about each other's lives. We're sharing each other's wins and we're mourning over each other's losses. Fellowships that are naturally expressed out of sincere, deep, committed, and wholehearted love towards one another. Amen? We desire to be relevant to one another and relevant to the needs of the community around us. Galatians chapter 6 verse 2 says, bear with one another's burdens, or bear one another's burdens. Carry one another's burdens. We seek to create a place of healing and nurture for those that have been wounded. Rest for the weary. Those that have broken hearts. Those that have tried and failed. Those who are young in the faith and those that are mature in the faith. We desire to build churches that have a covenant of love as well as a commitment to honor one another. A community of honor. Our cell groups or our life groups, those small communities within our church, are able to help us know each other more deeply. Many times as churches grow in size, individuals can come into our church and feel they're a part of a crowd where nobody knows them. We desire to build deep, meaningful relationships. And one of the ways is in those small groups that can meet weekly, in each other's homes, sharing a meal together, praying for one another, hearing each other's cares, hearing about each other's victories so we can celebrate, and hearing about each other's losses so we can cry together, pray together, and believe for victory together. We seek to be diverse to communities that are different to ourselves. We want to do this by reaching beyond the walls of our comfort zone and touch parts of our community that we don't currently touch. Parts of our city, parts of our nation that are not currently being met. Learning to serve their needs holistically and effectively touching their lives so that they can experience and see the love of Christ in the way that we relate to them. So when we say that we're serious about being a life-enriching community, it means that we're serious about reaching the people within our church with the love of God in meaningful connections and meaningful relationships, but also extending beyond the church to reach our immediate community with the love of God. And then through those relationships, stretching to reach the needs of our nation and the nations of the world in life-enriching community, meaningful relationships, and holistic care. Let's believe that it's possible to go further than just being superficial in relationships and believing we can have a community where each person is adequately and meaningfully and thoroughly loved with an enthusiastic care, an enthusiastic love, and a meaningful touch by God. Amen?